Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the overtaxed riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. It's been 2 weeks since the NDP Liberal government dumped their 2024 tax and spend budget. Despite all the taxpayer dollars funneled to the legacy media, not a single news outlet has reported on 2 major changes hidden by Trudeau. The thing about this government is you also must check the tax supplement it issues alongside the budget. That's where the devils hide their details. Now, most of their devilish detail is the plan to violate the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Violate is the wrong word. They plan to kill Section 8 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Their murder weapon of choice is the Canada Revenue Agency's new ballistic piece called a Notice of Non-Compliance. Section 8 of the Charter states, everyone has the right to be secure against unreasonable search or seizure. In practice, this means that if the RCMP show up at your door and demand to know something or demand to see something of yours, every Canadian should know that they can voluntarily comply with the demand or can tell them to come back with a warrant. The RCMP would then have to go to a judge and explain both what they want it for and why they want it. What the NDP Liberal Socialist Coalition is proposing is to give unlimited power to the Canada Revenue Agency to come to your door and demand to see any information they want that would assist them in making you look like a tax cheat. If you decline to provide the information the Prime Minister demands, the CRA would have the power to issue a notice of non-compliance and impose a fine of $50 a day. If a Canadian believes this is unfair, the government says not to worry. They can appeal the decision to the same bureaucrats who issued the decision. If the CRA denies the appeal, Canadians can resort to federal court at their very own considerable expense. The result would be that wealthy Canadians receive the Charter's protections while everyone else is left to the political whims of the radicals currently running the country. Of course, millions of Canadians have already learned these regressive Liberals will ignore the Charter when it suits them, and when doing so, polls well. This is the natural result of socialism. In a liberty-respecting democracy, property rights are fundamental human rights. Section 8 falls under our legal rights. Our legal rights are meant to protect our human rights. Not only is your body protected from unreasonable search and seizure, so too is your property. In order to get at your property, the socialists need to chip away at your legal rights. Sometimes the attack on property rights is subtle, like this new power for the CRA. Other times, the attack on owning property is spelled out in black and white, as on page 41 of the budget. That is where Canadians can find the Liberal plan to invent an entirely new federal property tax. For a government so addicted to ruling by slogans and cliches, it's a little surprising they haven't heard about the old cliche about failing to learn the lessons of history. The new proposed federal residential property tax is a perfect example of Liberals not learning anything from recent Liberal history. And by recent history, I'm talking about March. That's when the Liberal ministers hit up their local bars and taverns to celebrate an increase in the excise tax on alcohol. Drunk on their own arrogance, the Liberals were celebrating the fact they weren't going to pay a steep political price. You see, the Liberals had put the excise tax on an automatic escalator in 2017. Instead of elected, accountable political leaders being in charge of a federal tax, the Prime Minister handed control over to fate and the inflation rate. Inflation soared thanks to government spending, so the tax on alcohol was set to match it. The Liberals made a political calculation that a 5% tax increase on alcohol would cost them more votes than a 2% increase, so they intervened. Canadians may have hoped that this would be a lesson for these Liberals in the importance of maintaining control over tax rates, but that would require humility. Having learned nothing, the Liberals are now proposing a brand new federal property tax to be imposed on Canadians who own vacant land zoned for residential use. Unlike excise taxes on alcohol, the government will control the tax rate, but everything else will be controlled by municipalities and local politicians. Just as with the excise tax on alcohol, the decision over how much tax you pay, or if you even have to pay this tax, will be out of the Liberals' control. The difference is that no person controls the rate of inflation, though some can influence it more than others. Whether or not your vacant property is zoned residential is a different story. That's decided by a small group of local politicians. The Liberals believe this will incentivize the construction of housing, but they don't know that for sure. What it will do is incentivize lobbying. The well-connected and privileged will lobby their councils to rezone their vacant lands to avoid the tax until they're ready to develop or sell it. Even if a developer wants to build houses on vacant land zoned residential, the decision to move forward is not entirely their own. They have to take into account interest rates, labor, availability of products, permitting issues, weather, and a host of other normal things which could delay development. The Liberal plan is to punish them with more taxes. At the end of the day, the developer won't be the ones paying the additional costs. That'll be passed on to the home buyer. Only this NDP Liberal government could be incompetent enough to believe inventing new taxes will build more homes. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant. How's that?